I think that's one of the coolest things about paleontology is like paleontology as kind of a vessel for cultural exchange because so many of these animals have a history that's not just their life history, but also because each of them is represented by a few specimens, those specimens are often like really connected to the culture of the people who found and excavated and named them. Welcome up our first guest, Veggie Vulture.
Hello.
Hello, Veggie Vulture. What's your question?
Um, I had a question more about the journey of studying biology. So I'm both really interested in modern dinosaurs, basically birds and pterosaurs, but pterosaurs weren't really dinosaurs. So I was wondering, is there a way I can study both ornithology and connect it to paleontology in a way?
Yeah, that's what I do actually. My project that I'm working on right
Can
now
I
has been.
record this for my future? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, no, you can record this, but you don't have
Awesome.
to. This will be up on YouTube, recorded as well within the
Mm-hmm.
next few days. So if you don't record it, then it's fine. You'll still be able to access it. But
Mm-hmm.
you can go ahead and do that. So yeah, I have experience in both ornithology and paleontology, primarily ornithology, actually. Most of
Mm-hmm.
my research is done on living bird specimens, and I
That's
use
great.
techniques that are common in paleontology, as well as some fossil specimens to do what's called ancestral character trait reconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
where we look at, from a series of known specimens, what the nodes on the base of that group would look like. So, what the early members of a group would look like that we don't necessarily have any fossils for. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there are certainly paths that you can do ornithology and paleontology. Of course, there are fossil birds, but you could also, generally, there are paleontologists who just specialize in certain traits across the fossil record. And you can do that in a very small or very broad group. Like there are people who look at teeth across many different groups of animals, and they look at the similarities between there. If you're interested in pterosaurs and birds, there is certainly a lot of similarities.
Yeah, that's great.
Like you can look at the convergent evolution of flight, and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. And there's plenty of research going into how flight evolved and what factors are involved in its origins. The origin of flight in birds is so much more well known than the origin of flight in pterosaurs. So there's definitely a lot of
Mm-hmm.
research to be done in how those early pterosaurs were first developing flight.
That's such a good point because I was worried since pterosaurs aren't really dinosaurs. I was thinking, how can I connect the path of ornithology and specifically pterosaur part of paleontology?
Yeah, well, you kind of just have to pull it back a little bit from just looking at dinosaurs into looking at all archosaurs because pterosaurs are very closely related to dinosaurs. They're much more closely related to birds than they are to crocodiles, and so there is a lot of common morphology between pterosaurs and birds that you can really look at, and I'm sure there's good research to be done there.
Thank you so much. I had another question. So I live in Turkey and we don't really got like the paleontology majors or college specifically for those stuff. So obviously I have to study like normal, less specificated type of biology first.
Hmm.
But I have a lot of field work experience, especially in ornithology. I even got some certificates about like falconry, bird conservation, things like that. So I was thinking, do I have to be like study so many years, or can I study for a while, like a normal while, a little while, then go to work side of it into the field work, museum work, instead of being like doctor, professional paleontologist. You know what you know my
Yeah,
point.
and you don't necessarily need a
Mm-hmm.
doctorate to work in a museum position long term.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of people who I work with. I also don't have my doctorate. I'm
Mm-hmm.
relatively early in my career as a researcher as well, and so I
I
don't have
see.
a doctorate. And so I'm probably the least experienced person in my department, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there are definitely ways to get into museum work and to get into doing a lot of research within paleontology without necessarily having all that academic experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you can start with ornithology and then, like I said, pull that into including paleontology data sets. I started doing my research project with only living specimens, but as it's gone on, I've looked at more and more fossil birds to really get a stronger image of the sorts of things that I was dealing with. And so you definitely don't have to start immediately with a focus in paleontology. And if you're once you're in a museum in an institution like that, you can access specimens from multiple departments of that museum if they have a paleontology collection relatively easily. And so even if you're working in an ornithology department, you can do stuff with that museum's paleontology department and the paleontology departments of other museums. There's a lot of collaboration in this sort of research. And so I definitely think that's a good path to get into museum work, and you definitely don't have to wait until you have your doctorate to start looking at museum positions.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. I'm new, but I'm very interested. I started following you.
Thank you so
Um,
much. And you said you're from
I don't
Turkey?
know. Yeah, that's
I
right.
was in Turkey visiting a friend some years ago. It was very beautiful.
Oh, nice. I'm not Turkish myself, but I live there. It's very nice.
Ah, very cool.
Is there a limit on how many questions we ask or come to the discussion? If
Oh
I'm
no no
talking
no,
to my
not at
friend.
all.
Okay, okay, thank you. Um, I also do taxidermy. I specialize in bird taxidermy, so I thought maybe I could get into museum work from that way too.
Yeah, I am also a bird
Bird
preparator.
specimen.
I skin specimens for
Mm-hmm.
my museum as well.
That's
Um, it's not really like the main thing that I do, but that's definitely a valuable skill to have.
mm-hmm.
It's something that you should certainly, I guess, put on your resume or talk about that you have that qualification because you know it's a very important thing. Specimen preparation is
Mm-hmm.
kind of a becoming less common as more and more emphasis gets put on research as opposed to specimen collection, but
Mm-hmm.
specimen preparation is still super important both in ornithology and paleontology.
Awesome.
I, you know, I work in in the ornithology department at the museum I work at, but I volunteer as a paleontology preparator, and so I'm getting sort of experience in that area as well, and it's you know surprisingly quite similar. Working on you know old fossils
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
living specimens. It takes a lot longer to kind of get a fossil specimen ready for research, but definitely knowing how to do bird taxidermy, knowing how to prepare those museum specimens will help you out a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
Yeah, like a study skill. I wish I lived somewhere that like people cared more about this stuff because we don't really have like specialized paleontology, natural histories, and we are very lesser on these topics. That's why I want to move. Another issue that I have is since we don't got these specific majors that focuses on like zoology, we have like broad biology here. So
Hmm.
it's kind of hard for me to study that because it doesn't specifically focus on like things that I like more, and I'm neuro. Oh my god, I can't spell. Sorry, I'm neuro divergent, so it's harder for me to study that way. That's why I'm looking for like the the littlest thing that I can get a degree, and then move with work experience, then get a bigger degree when I
Yeah.
move.
Your undergraduate degree, where it is, like in terms of your major, doesn't matter so much in paleontology because it's a very like graduate focused field. Like making connections and you know getting to know researchers in your undergrad is important, but you can also do that through work. And, you know, like just having a basic biology degree is not going to prevent you from doing that research and getting somewhere in that field. And also, um, you know, I don't know so much about the paleontology opportunities in Turkey, but if you know CM Kozeman, like if you're aware of
Oh,
him,
he's my friend.
you know CM Kozeman?
Yeah, we met sometimes, and he helps me with my animation projects. The
That's
Arthur of
awesome.
All Tomorrows,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know him as well. We've spoken a few times. But I would definitely
that's
talk to
great.
him if you guys
We talked
are
before, but I should definitely talk again to update him about stuff and ask
yeah.
about that more.
Oh, for
Yeah, he
sure.
connected
Yeah.
me to some great wildlife illustrators, some taxidermies. There's a small community, but like again, what unless you go to a university, even for universities, is very rare. Only
Mhm.
the major biology. I like biology, of course, but because I focus on the thing that interests me the most, it's kind of hard for me, you know.
Yeah. Well, I would say definitely talk to Mr. Kozman about the paleontology scene in Turkey because he knows for sure much more about it than I do,
Yeah,
and he would be
that's
able
awesome.
to
That
give you
was a
some
great
good ideas.
suggestion. I forgot how much experience he has in paleontology other than art.
Yeah, I mean, he knows a loads of paleontologists, and he is definitely more familiar with the kinds of like kind of closer museums and places that you can institutions that you can look at to get experience in the field for sure.
I get curious. For your ornithology, is there any specific group of birds you focus on?
Yeah, I do my research on Gallo and Ceres, which are the chickens and ducks.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool.
I'm pretty solidly focused on the early Anseriformes and their kind of origins as a group. My research
That's
project right
awesome.
now is really hyper focused on reconstructing what the carpometacarpus of the earliest Anseriformes looked like. So the carpometacarpus, for people in chat who don't know a ton about bird anatomy, is a series of fused finger bones that supports the primary feathers of the wing. It is right after the part where the thumb comes out, and it's also the bone that the thumb attaches to.
It's under the Elula, right?
Yes, yeah. And particularly, I'm looking at that Alula attachment area because
Awesome.
Anseriformes, modern Anseriformes, have a wide variety of really bizarre structures that emerge out of that alular attachment point. They have kind of spikes that come out in some places. Sometimes they have
Yeah,
a process there that is very
like some
large and rounded.
species of goose, if I'm right.
Yeah, spur-winged geese have a
Yeah.
radius rather than an alula or an alula process that is very sharp. And then there are three species of screamer ducks that have two spikes that come out of that process there. Um,
Very cool.
yeah, and
I
so
was gonna mention screamers in general, like the horned screamers. I know they're not ducks, but they also got the cool spur ring.
yeah, no, they're amazing. I probably
Yeah.
have spent the most time looking at screamers out of any of the groups that I've researched. The museum that I'm at, fortunately, we have a pretty solid collection of horned screamers, and because most of them are study skins, fortunately, the way that this museum prepares study skins leaves the carpometacarpus intact, and so I was able to borrow an X-ray machine from our
Yeah, I
ichthyology
feel like
department.
yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah,
I would love to see
and do
study skins.
X-rays of the study skins. So now I can turn these study skins into basically bone specimens specifically for my project, which is super cool.
Very nice. So you preserve the bones?
Yeah. So when we prepare specimens, we cut right above the we cut in the middle of the radius and ulna towards the carpometacarpus, and we leave the carpometacarpus in the wing. But we take out all the bones that aren't skull bones, leg bones, and wing bones and tail bones. So like all the body cavity stuff we remove. And then if it's a particularly rare bird,
It
sometimes
was like everything except the skull, if I remember correctly.
yeah, there's some places that do that, I know, but particularly the procedure that we have leaves in a lot more of those bones, which is very fortunate because it
Oh,
allows me
that's
to be able to access
It's
them and
nice
stuff
to
is
see the difference of preserving a specimen because sometimes museums have their own style. It's kind of like art, you know. Each person, like for taxidermy in general, each person has their own style of skinning. It's really interesting.
yeah,
Of course, there's the more professional ones, but it's there is still some preferences which I find really cool.
definitely. I found this when I was doing some of my X-rays, but there is an old museum that donated some of their specimens to ours a few years ago, and I found that when they prepared their bird specimens, they would put a metal wire running through them, through the neck and like tail. When we do that, we use a wooden stick to keep it completely
Oh.
straight, but they use a metal wire so that they can bend the neck around and look at like different parts of it, which I thought was very interesting. It might not last as long because if you bend it, it might break eventually. And so I wonder if they ever stopped doing that. But definitely the older specimens that they had, that was interesting to see, just like the difference in technique from museum to museum.
Hmm. Very cool. I'm personally interested in birds of prey raptors, but specifically vultures, both New World and Old World, but mostly Old World, which is really good for my area because they need our help. They're a very
Yeah.
endangered group of birds, and where I live, it's basically the Old World, so there's places I can join when I like develop more in my path.
Yeah. No, vulture research in the Mediterranean and that sort of area is super, super
Hmm.
important. I have some colleagues that work on like predatory bird stuff, and
Hmm.
that's all very interesting to me. So I do hope you are successful
Thank
in
you
your
so
journey
much.
and you get some good work done there because
Thank you so much.
I would love to know more about all of the wonderful, wonderful vultures we get in the old world and the new world as well. But particularly old world vultures are super interesting to me.
Yeah, they're awesome. My profile picture is a palm vulture.
Ah, very cool.
Yep.
Is that your favorite species of vulture?
I would say it's the one I relate to the most, but also one of my favorites.
Yeah. I think my favorite vulture is probably Lammergeier, the bearded vulture.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome. They're one of the most popular ones. Oh,
I'm sure they are.
I wasn't
It's a very
expecting
safe
you
pick.
here.
They're like kind of the T-Rex of vultures.
Mhm. Yeah, I
uh,
wasn't expecting to see a friend of mine join this live.
yeah, that's very
But
cool.
yeah, my favorites would be Griffin vultures. I would
Mm.
make it top three. Griffin vultures, palm vultures, and maybe white-headed vultures.
White-headed vultures are cool. I do love palm-nut vultures though. They have that like
Yeah,
they have
they're
such
very exotic.
their coloration is like really beautiful. It reminds me kind
Yeah, of
of like
secretary birds.
of like black-backed gulls. I don't know if you've ever seen a
Yes.
black-backed gull. They have like that same kind of striking black, yellow, white
Yeah,
combination.
and they also remind me of swallow-tailed gulls.
Hmm.
They also got the black, white, and pink orange palette. A lot of birds do actually. It rocks on them. It's very cool.
Ah, yeah. Do you know about the melanation of the ends of the wings of certain birds to prevent the feathers from wearing down during long flights? Like how they have black wingtips because the pigment that makes them black keeps the feathers stronger than unpigmented feathers.
Oh, that's real cool. I haven't heard of it much, I don't think, but I've heard similar things to that. It reminds me of wax wings having actual wax on their wings,
Hmm.
sort of.
Wax wings are so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Terracos also got that. The I don't remember the exact species, but the green Terraco.
They have yeah, they have their own sort of thing. Do they have wax, or does the terracin also
They
function
have
as?
pigments on their perimaries. It's red, and when you wash them in taxidermy, it the color fades.
Yeah, 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 yeah. My boss told me about that when he was
Yeah.
doing Turricow preparation one time in the field, and
Mhm.
he spilled some of the alcohol that he was using on the Turricow, and it washed out of the bird and onto his white coat, and so there's a big stain of Turricow
Yeah,
pigments.
it's really cool. I have to rejoin the live real quick because my keyboard is stuck.
Oh, okay.
Oh, never mind, it got fixed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Turricos are so cool. They're amazing birds as well. There are so many
Yeah.
beautiful birds. They really
I
are.
also really like ospreys. They are like my second favorite birds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen many ospreys. They're still very amazing. I was out on a walk maybe
Hmm.
5 6 months ago, and I saw an osprey pull a snook out of the water, um, and that's the first time I've ever seen an osprey like succeed at a hunt. It was so cool. It's amazing to see birds of prey like
Hmm.
take prey in flight. It's awesome.
I took a lot of ecology classes in Iran about birds of prey, so we went to count them during their migration. So I got to see a lot of awesome bird raptor species that's maybe Western people would consider very rare.
Oh wow, that's really awesome. I would love to do some of those bird banding stuff. I'm pretty much.
Yeah,
I mean, I do some field work, but I'm pretty lab oriented in regards to my research. I don't often deal with live specimens in that way.
I would say I do half lab if like for future half lab half field work. I think a mix of both makes it great.
Yeah,
It depends on the person, of course, but I feel like a mix of both is a good thing.
I think that's definitely true. I think
Yeah.
you get very valuable experience from both of them.
Hmm. But field can be tiring. Like the field I went was considered easy ones. Some fields can be very hard. It
Hmm.
depends on the person, of course.
Yeah, I find myself I tend to have a good time when I'm doing field work. Pretty much all the field work I've done is more paleontology oriented. So I do enjoy it. I like being out in the desert looking for bones. It's a fun time.
Nice. Yeah, I go. I haven't found any fossils yet. I didn't specifically go fossil hunting, but I do go bone hunting.
Yeah, there's very much some good stuff out there to find.
Yeah. Where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm from the United States. I don't want to really get more specific about that.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking country-wise
Yeah.
because you were talking about bird specimen, and I was curious if you guys got MBTA or not.
Yeah, no, we do have MBTA here.
I know. I mean, like less strict compared to US.
Yeah. Um, I don't know the precision of the treaty act here, but there is definitely a lot of there's like a lot of protections in place for a lot of different bird species.
Yeah, I know, but like you guys got probably permit cheat code, but compared to US, it's a lot less strict.
Hmm. Yeah. So when you guys do like,
Hmm.
how much do you have to go through for like doing specimen collection and stuff in Turkey?
Oh, like rule legal wise.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Iran.
Ah.
Unfortunately, Iran almost doesn't have any rules about finding birds that are already dead. There is general taxidermy permit rule, but that's about it.
Mm.
Which is not good, but also kind of good for me because I'm a person who cares about conservation. So I'm not like going around like poaching or for selling and stuff. I'm trying to practice for good of it since there isn't many legality there. But in Turkey, Turkey is more strict, especially on birds of prey.
Yeah.
You can't sell taxidermies unless they're trophies from people who legally hunt.
Mm,
But I think you can do taxidermy for yourself because that's what my mentor told me, and he works for the government.
yeah. Um, Most of the
I would
specimens.
say a
Yeah,
lot
go ahead.
less strict. Like, if you find a dead bird outside, you can probably take it. No one is going to stop you. I worked with some dead gulls here, decreased gulls. But yeah, they're like some sensitive and like more endangered and wild type of birds, like raptors here. But you can take some songbirds.
Yeah. There's some pretty strict protections for a lot of species in the U.S., but it varies. I mean, there are some that you can. There's some birds here that are
Yes.
considered non-native that you can just kill completely without a
Yes.
permit.
Yeah,
Uh,
like was it? Or other overpopulated ones like pheasants, if I'm not wrong, for you
yeah,
guys. Mm-hmm.
starlings
Yes.
and house
Also
sparrows are the
sorry.
main ones
Mm-hmm.
where I'm at that people just kill without permits.
Yeah.
And they're
They're
so
very
abundant, which
invasive.
they're good for study. We use them
Yes.
for stuff relating to like microplastic levels, and so you can get a big data set of like stomach contents in starlings. But like
Oh my
there
god.
are,
Speaking of invasive species in Turkey, there is so many street feral cats and dogs, which
oh
is
my gosh, yeah, yeah.
awful. And it's like they're like a part of people's culture here
Hmm.
because they think like the outdoor cats bring good luck, and no one is going to believe me if I tell them no, it's not good. The another thing they do that's very unscientific in my opinion is they just thread their left, like not even people, um the like the people who are part of the government do it, not like normal people. That's how normalized it is. They just leave a whole large bucket of leftover bread for wild birds to feed on, and they think they are helping, but they're
But
not.
no, yeah, because they can't digest it.
So we definitely like third world countries where I'm from. We definitely need improvement, which I think is a good opportunity for me actually.
I think there's a lot of work to be done in basically every part of the world.
Yeah, but
Everywhere is like so far away from having
everywhere,
really
but
good
there's
conservation.
countries that need more help and more education, you know.
No, yeah. No, when I was in Burgas, there were feral cats everywhere, and they're cute, but
Yeah,
there's so many, and it's a problem in some places in the U.S. as well.
yeah. I would say US is a lot less. It's just some people not
Yeah,
like
it really
having
depends
the
on the area.
pets.
I mean, the U.S. also gets colder, so there are some places where feral cats really can't survive in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But Turkey, it's a good temperature for them basically all year round, so
Yeah.
they can breed a lot more.
Oh my god. But yeah, what makes it harder, a lot harder to educate is that it's a part of the culture now. So people are going to be very like angry about it if you even try to educate in a nice way.
Yeah, yeah. I can't say that I don't relate to that. Even in the states, there are a lot of people who are very resistant to learning about the best practices for
Any
ecology.
topic. Yeah. It's like any topic, any conservation topic that you try to educate, there's people who talk with their hearts instead of brains, of course, always. There's those people. But especially in a place where things like that has become a big part of the culture, is even harder to do that because that culture is like a strong wall stopping a conservationist, activist, whatever, to try and educate. But
Mm,
it's like a metal wall. Like if you're
yeah.
trying to educate to normal people, it's like a wooden wall. But if it's somewhere where that things the people do that they think they're doing good, but it's actually doing bad for them, has become a big part of culture, it's even harder to do that.
Yeah. No, definitely. I would absolutely agree with you.
Traditional cultures, yeah.
That's very true. Um, yeah.
Yeah. You can go ahead. Sorry I talk so much. I'm really interested in stuff like this. You
No,
can
it's great.
you can answer some of the questions. Someone asked, "What bird is closest to an actual dinosaur?"
They're all equally
Yeah,
close to actual dinosaurs.
they're all.
Because they're all actual dinosaurs.
Yeah.
In terms of the groups of non-bird dinosaurs that birds are the most closely related to, they're Maniraptorans. So a lot of the very highly feathered, mostly two-legged, smaller meat-eating dinosaurs would be the closest related to our living birds. But all birds are equally related to all non-bird all non-bird dinosaurs because their common ancestor is nested within Maniraptora. So they're all dinosaurs.
Um, a person asked what is the ancestor of eels.
That is a good question. Eels within Anguilliformes are sitting in a group that contains the true eels and then some other eel-ish ray-finned fish. So tarpon are some of the most closely related fish to eels, but eels in general are pretty specialized fish, like the true eels at least. I mean, electric eel, they're the long kind of slender body shape has showed up a lot throughout fish. So depending on what you're considering an eel, it would be different answers, species to species. But generally, something within the very base of Elapamorpha, I would say would be your best guess at what like the ancestor to eels. There's some extinct ones from the late Cretaceous, or also some in the early Cretaceous. Bolichthes is an albuliform, so it's kind of like almost in that eel group, but not quite. It's related to spiny eels and true eels, but it's sitting outside of that group. Um, there's a lot of like kind of long-bodied ray-finned fish from the late Jurassic, early Cretaceous that are eel-esque. Is the chicken being related to the T-Rex a myth? Chickens are not particularly related to tyrannosaurs compared to other modern birds, but they are dinosaurs, and so they do share a lot of relation with tyrannosaurs. Tyrannosaurs are one of the closest non-Maniraptoran. Depending on who you ask, they are Maniraptorans. There's a phylogenetic grouping that considers tyrannosaurs within a group called Tyrannoraptora, where they're with the dromaeosaurs. But tyrannosaurs in general are very close to modern birds. Have we found any fossils of eel ancestors? Yeah. Well, Bolichthes and Estadia are two relatively well preserved elapiforms, which are closely related to eels and spiny eels. So they're not really ancestors per se, but they're potentially representative of what the common ancestor of the modern bonefish and the modern spiny eels and eels would look like. What are your thoughts on Pachyothermy or full endothermy of dinosaurs. I think that probably most dinosaurs were relatively endothermic, just because of their size and probably the amount of like pneumatism and like efficient respiration presence in their physiology. They clearly have the capacity to be very active. When it comes to the ornithischians, I think maybe poikilothermy is more, or like mesothermy is more applicable in some cases, but there are definitely some ornithischians that are 100% endothermic, just because of, again, like how much activity their body plans suggest. So I think in general, if we're looking at a dinosaur species, it's quite reliable to say that it would have been endothermic until evidence is presented to the contrary, which there is in some cases. Does current version of T-Rex have feathers? That is a difficult question. There are close relatives of Tyrannosaurs that do have feathers, but the only like soft tissue fossils we have of Tyrannosaurus itself preserve scales. The issue with that is that those scales are in places that would be scaly on a mostly feathered animal. So they're like from foot and from, I think, some from under the neck. And it's kind of possible that T-Rex had either sparse feathering as an adult or something along those lines. It's really still up for debate. Pretty much every dinosaur had some kind of feathering, like every group of dinosaur, I mean, but there are certainly dinosaurs that did lose their feathering because they just didn't particularly need it. So like Carnotaurus, for example, was likely not feathered, as were a lot of the other velosaurids. I mean, yes.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I just checked your TikTok page and I saw you're an artist too. That's great. And do you like speculative
I
biology?
do. I quite like spec bio. I think it's super fun. That's one of the main reasons I like Monster Hunter as a series. Is it's like,
That's why I asked, yeah.
yeah, it's a great,
I've been wanting
it's
to
a great
get
thing.
into it if my laptop can handle it. That's why
Yeah,
I had to choose between Path of Titans and that.
I quite like Path of Titans. I enjoy it. I also played The Isle for a little bit, but I mostly play Monster Hunter now. Did flying evolve from running or jumping? Currently, our evidence suggests that flying evolved from a behavior, or rather, it was co-opted from structures that enabled a behavior. This is in birds specifically, called wing-assisted incline running, which is a behavior that modern birds do when they're too young to fly properly, where in order to allow them to better climb angled surfaces, they'll beat their wings as they run up a wall or up a tree trunk to kind of generate downforce, like the fins on a race car push it into the track so that it doesn't fly up when it gets super fast. And so birds would do the same thing, where instead of being pulled down by gravity, there's a greater force pushing them into the wall or into the tree trunk. And modern baby birds do this, and a lot of the non-flying ancestors of the birds within Dinosauria have traits that suggest that they were pretty excellent runners, and also that they were living in environments that would allow for wing-assisted incline running like that to benefit them.
Someone was asking a bit ago about good ways to get into researching dinosaurs, and I've been wondering for a bit if there have been if there are like good online resources for people to check out.
If you know very little about dinosaurs and you want to give yourself a general systematic knowledge, Philip Curry, who is a really, really well-known paleontologist at University of Alberta, published his Paleo 101 class on Coursera for free. And you can take that course completely for free online. It's a college-level course. It is introductory. And so if you know a good chunk about dinosaurs, a lot of it will be review. But you should take it if you're planning on, seriously heading into paleontology or doing something or do something similar to that. I mean, a lot of schools offer paleontology courses, not all of them, but a lot of them. and getting that is pretty good foundational knowledge. And it'll tell you the basics of dinosaur taxonomy and how we infer ecological. Oh, thank you, Robert Rain, for the dinosaurs. Appreciate that. But yeah, it's good to take that sort of introductory class to get into paleo.
That reminds me of a similar question. So I have a good knowledge of paleontology. I would say I'm good, not great. Like, I know a lot of things that normal people don't know, but I have some trouble with
I think you're
pronouncing the
muted.
name and stuff like that. So I was thinking if there's a source for people who know about the dinosaurs good, but they want to be great.
Yeah, probably. I would say, I don't know. At that point, if you have a pretty strong knowledge of
Mm-hmm.
paleontology and paleontology concepts, I would look at if you can read a paper about dinosaurs and you can get through it and you kind of understand those basic terms relatively well. If you're looking at getting broad knowledge of like the state of paleontology and really strong knowledge of how these groups of animals are related to each other and how they've changed over time, picking up a paleontology textbook and just going through it and reading it and understanding it is always a good idea. And then there are loads and loads of paleo papers that are available online, some of them for free on ResearchGate, which are,
Yeah, I
that's
love
always great to
that
see.
side.
And it's good to just read papers and keep up to date in the field. There are places online as well where pretty advanced concepts in paleontology get discussed, and they get kind of in depth with a lot of that stuff. I know Joshua Nook has the paleo stream where he goes over a lot of that super cool stuff, and it's very audience.
The dinosaur class.
Yeah, he does. He does. I think most of his streams are a little bit less structured than I guess you would call a class, but he does have some more like lesson oriented videos
Yeah,
on
I've
his
been
YouTube.
there. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Joshua is great. He's an awesome
Yeah.
resource for anyone who's like kind of.
Is it the person named Lakota? If I'm probably
Oh
misspelling.
yeah, Lakota. Yeah, I've seen his streams. I'm not super familiar, but
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion for people who already grew up like reading dinosaur books and have a good knowledge, but want to be even better.
mhm.
Like they know pretty well, but they want to even know more professional.
Yeah, I've heard very good things about Lakota, so I will
Yeah.
trust you to recommend that. I've heard a lot of good things about his YouTube and his TikTok live. Um, Yeah, there's some good spots for that. If you're interested in a little bit more of the entertainment side of things, that is still informative. Unnatural History channel on YouTube has some great videos on, just general concepts of biology, and
I
he teaches
I
them
want
by like,
more than entertainment because I think I already like have a good knowledge of entertainment
yeah,
part. Maybe study it more for when I slowly start getting into paleontology.
yeah. In that case, I would definitely say look at some paleontology textbooks. The one that I'm reading right now, I started reading it for a class, and then I've just continued reading it. It's called "Bringing Fossils to Life" by I think Donald Prothero is his name, and he talks.
Can you put it in chat so I take a screenshot?
Yes. Okay. How do I type in chat? Okay, there we go. Bringing Fossils to Life. Donald Prothero. And there's a trilobite on the front of it, at least in the one that I have. It's a good one. And that is a book that touches both on the just life history aspect of paleontology as well as a little bit of the how we know what we know of it. It gets pretty into stuff like preservation bias. That is an area that I think will take that anyone who's getting really into paleontology should focus on, especially, is learning about preservation bias and taphonomy, because that.
Like the less fun part of it, more about how the fossils form.
Yeah,
I get it.
definitely. I think that stuff is super important, and it changes a lot of the ways that you look at fossil assemblages, from like just seeing them as kind of snapshots of a paleo environment to realizing that and understanding how those images can be very heavily modulated by the conditions of preservation. Like a lot of our previous understanding of how paleo environments worked, and paleontology in general, came from relatively flawed study that was conducted without a lot of this modern knowledge of taphonomy in mind. Like now that we know so much more about the chemistry and geophysics of paleontology, we can really start correcting for preservation bias and understanding how to make our image of the ancient world more accurate.
Interesting. Speaking of speculative bias,
Oh, I can't hear you right now if you're speaking, because you've closed the TikTok app is running in the background and it doesn't pick
oh,
up your microphone.
okay, my bad. I was saying, speaking of speculative biology, I'm working on a project in the animation,
Ooh.
about it's about it's very fun and it's very fun way, but it's about a mad ornithologist eco-terrorist that
Oh.
wants to take over the world, but with bioengineered bird weapons known as warbirds, and it's kinda, you would say it's, you see in media a lot of people make dinosaurs badass and powerful, but no one does it with modern dinosaurs.
Oh
And
yeah.
I thought it'd be cool because shrikes paralyze their prey, um,
Hmm.
finches drink blood, vultures projectile vomit acid. So I thought it would be cool to have a more edgy, badass metal side of birds, you
That's
know.
really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, what do you think about, now that we're talking about that sort of cool, gross stuff that birds do? What do you think about
Mm-hmm.
snowy sheathbills? Do you know about sheathbills from
Oh
the
yeah.
peak of South America?
Are those are those? I'm probably mistaking it with another bird species. There's a species of scavenger bird in Atlantica. It's really weird looking. It's probably something else. Um, it's it looks fake. It's white little bird, kind of looks like a partridge, but it's more similar to petrels. And the scavenger is aggressive. It's really funny. I
Yeah, I
really
think I think you are maybe thinking about snowy sheathbills. They're white. They
yeah,
have kind of
yeah.
the bill
I think I was right then.
of a crow, but they have kind of the body of something closer
Yeah,
to
then I
a
was
crow
probably
bird.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was worried if I wasn't, but yeah. I remember they did something special in their behavior. I can't remember what it exactly was. Can you
They
remind
do
me
they do a
again?
lot of really amazing things with their behavior. So I'm going to go over all the weird stuff they do. Um,
Yeah, pretty sure. Because I
they
discovered them half a year ago and I loved them. I was like, wow, that bird looks really weird and I love weird
Yeah,
looking birds.
so they're both scavengers,
Hmm.
and kleptoparasites. So they eat already rotten stuff, and they also steal fresh food from other organisms around them.
Hmm.
They often take food from penguins after the penguins regurgitate it for their young.
Yeah, that was the bird I was
Yeah, they'll run
talking
into the nest and they'll take it. If the
about.
penguin chicks are alone after the penguins have regurgitated food into them, they'll also eat the chicks. Um, they tend to pick undigested food out of animal feces as well.
Hmm.
They also eat. They're famous for eating tapeworms. out of feces. So they'll find
Oh
like
wow.
parasites and eggs of parasites that come out in feces, and they'll eat it. They also steal milk and they'll eat placental tissue from nursing elephant seals.
Oh my god, that's
Yeah, they're
awesome.
incredibly bizarre. I got the opportunity to work with a few
Yeah, the
preserved
moment I
sheath
saw
bills.
them, I was like, I didn't have the time to actually research about them, but I researched it and I saw their photos. I was like, yeah, that's one of my top favorite birds now.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing. And they have, guess what? They have really bizarrely convergent wings compared to the screamers. They have structures in their wings that look a lot like those spikes on the wings of screamers. They're much shorter and rounder, so they're kind of more
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
I
shape
was
of a.
gonna say they have really short wings for seabirds.
Yeah, they that's why I was working with them, is because their
Oh my
wings
god,
are
that's
so
awesome.
they're so strange in the way that they converge with the wings of a lot of modern like surviving ducks that are related to the earliest ducks. It's so interesting. They're almost
Have
like
you
an
got to
amalgamation
watch
of.
them or see a specimen from close? Because
Yeah,
you said you've been working. Oh my god.
they're amazing. Snowy sheathbills are so cool. They're definitely some of my favorite birds.
Have you seen live ones or a specimen?
No, I've only worked with preserved specimens.
Mm-hmm.
I have I've never been to Antarctica or that far south in South America.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would love to
I
go
would
at some
love to
point.
see giant petrels.
Yeah, I think there's so many beautiful seabirds in the world,
Yeah.
and I would love to do
Especially
some kind
weird
of
ones
project.
that I like. Especially the weird ones, like there's a lot of auklets there, if I'm not wrong. With weird, I don't know if the auklets were from there, but they got these weird big shapes and maybe even whiskers, crazy looking crests. Auklets are also very cool.
Yeah, auklets are amazing. Auks are as well.
Hmm.
One of my favorite birds probably is the razorbill auk. They look almost like
Yeah,
the great auk, but
they
they're
are.
much smaller.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They're amazing. They're very beautiful.
Have you heard of the auklet that produces mandarin smells, smell that smells like mandarin to attract mates?
Oh no, crested auklets.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, I've never
I
heard of
don't
that.
know.
That's so cool. Okay, I
Yeah, they
definitely
just
I definitely have to look at that. That's
yeah, it's awesome. And bird watchers try to find them by that smell. They have a mandarin lake, like the fruit, the orange. Um,
oh.
they produce that smell to attract mates, and the female outlets go crazy for it. It's really interesting and strange.
Wow, that is really cool and really bizarre.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't have pretty much all of the information that I get about seabirds is outside of academia. They're more of a personal interest than a research one. So I haven't really done a ton of like digging into seabirds. Um,
Can you research on them in future if you want? Like you're interested in them.
yeah, I might
And
actually
you
be doing some. The project that I'm starting soonish might include some seabirds in the data set. So
awesome.
yeah, it's also kind of a very preserved specimen oriented project, but there are some old specimens that recently came into possession of the museum that I'm working at from South Asia, and they're all they're fully preserved, so they're not skins; they're in alcohol, and they are uncolored. So we have to go off of like bone and feather shape characteristics to identify them, because we know where they're from, we know when they were collected, we know where they were collected exactly, but we have no idea what species they are because they're in batches. So they're captured basically through nets, and they were just tossed in these big jars of alcohol, and so we have to go through and identify them and number them.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah. So it's
Very
hopefully going to be a lot of
cool.
like cool Asian seabirds.
it's hard to choose between birds you want to study in ornithology. They're all so cool.
That's very true. They're all amazing. If you had a pet dinosaur in an apocalypse scenario, which dinosaur would you choose? I would probably pick a sauropod because when it died, then I would be able to survive for the longest on its meat. If we're talking about real
That's so
apocalypse
smart.
situations. Um, but also, I don't think while it was alive, I don't think anyone would mess with me if there was a sauropod following me around. I would be worried about it eating though. I don't know how much a sauropod could eat in like a post-apocalypse.
I think having like a falcon or something would be helpful for
That is
hunting.
true. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Falcon or a
I
vulture.
feel like it's falconry.
Yeah, I had a coworker who was a falconer. She raised Harris hawks,
I
and she would fly them.
I
Um,
do falconry, but whenever I can. But the thing is, there's only one club here, and they do it like one twice, or they go like to field maybe twice a year. They're
uh,
more private, so it's kind of hard for me until I move.
yeah, what kind of birds did you fly?
Oh, it's actually different from Western hawks used in falconry and raptors, so it's really cool. I got to husbandry gyr falcons and peregrine falcons.
Ah,
It was
falcons
amazing.
are very cool.
Yeah, like the white coloration of it too. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, they eat ptarmigans. Ah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
there was also a gyr falcon that was a hybrid between a peregrine and a gyr.
Oh, bird hybridization is so cool.
Yeah,
They
I actually didn't know it could happen between because the size difference is a lot.
Yeah, well, there are hybrids between so many birds that you would never expect it to happen between, even outside of birds. In fish, you know, paddlefish and sturgeon can hybridize,
Oh my god.
which they've been separated. Paddlefish and sturgeon diverged, I think, almost 200 million years ago, which is crazy. So, but even in birds, like Muscovy ducks and mallards can hybridize, which is very bizarre. Um, I believe buffleheads and hooded mergansers can hybridize. There's there's so much like surprising compatibility across all the species of birds.
Yeah, I never actually researched about that topic a lot. I would like to know more about it, about the crazy bird hybrids.
Yeah, it's everyone's always talking about the dinosaur hybrids from like Jurassic Park,
Yeah,
but there are
that's what I
real.
was trying to approach in my indie project to like all the crazy um recognition of dinosaurs and the badassness, but
Mhm.
no one does it with like modern dinosaurs. They think like they're weak or they underestimate their how cool they are. Birds are really metal.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, if anything, I initially started working in ornithology because it was like so adjacent to what I wanted to do with reptile paleontology, but I've grown to appreciate birds. I liked birds a lot when I first got into it. And the more I learn about them, just the more I grow to enjoy them, and the more like time I spend like learning about them. Sorry, a cat just fell onto my lap. Um, hi, hi. Um, Heard me talking about birds, probably. Um, but yeah, no, I've loved. I've just the more I learn about these things, the more I learn to love them. I love
Yeah.
paleontology so much more than I did when I first started getting into it, and I love ornithology so much more than I did when I first
It
started
was
getting
the
into it.
opposite for me.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my interest as a child was first birds, then it kept switching between birds and dinosaurs. Now it's kind of both.
Yeah. I find myself now getting really into the biology of living fish. And this is something that's happened very recently because I started working with fossil fish from the Devonian, just doing preparation work for them, not even any research. But then I was like,
Interesting.
oh, maybe I could consider doing a project on this because we seem to have quite a few specimens. And then, I was like, well, how do these guys relate to our living fish that are around today? And it was just the exact same thing that happened to me getting into living birds from looking at like how cool the extinct like dinosaurs are. And it's like there are so many beautiful, amazing species of fish that are alive today. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Flavius Belsarius, our fossil evidence indicates actually that feathers evolved before dinosaurs, so probably at least 240 million years ago. About the cat just stepped on my phone screen, which is why
Oh.
my screen went weird there. Okay, let's get you out of here. But because pterosaurs and dinosaurs
Mhm.
both have feathers, it's pretty likely that they share a feathered common ancestor, which points towards feathers showing up at least 240, 250 million years ago before those groups diverged.
Do we know that ancestor?
No, we don't really have
Oh my
any.
god, that's so interesting.
Yeah, we don't have any preserved body fossils from like feather preserving body fossils. I mean, from the earliest like pterosaur dinosaur ancestor. And pterosaur taxonomy in general is pretty fuzzy when it gets down to the early members. We don't have as concrete of like transitional record as we do with the birds, for example, just because it's so much older. And like I was talking about earlier with preservation bias, the older you get in the fossil record, the spottier and lower quality the fossils become generally. I
Yeah,
mean,
that makes sense.
we have beautiful fossils from basically all periods, but they get a lot more frequent the closer you get to the modern day, of course. And so we just unfortunately we don't know that much about the early pterosaurs. Potentially also because paleontology kind of, I guess, parasitizes off of a lot of modern research, if that makes sense. Not in a negative way, but a lot of the techniques we use in paleontology were initially developed for the research of modern animals and then retroactively applied to the fossil record. And because we don't have living pterosaurs to create those methods for, like we
Yeah.
have with birds, um, it's a little bit harder to get into like the development of methods for pterosaur research.
Oh, I love pterosaurs so much.
They're so cool.
Yeah, my favorites are if I for the unique part I like Nyctosaurus a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, Nyctosaurus is super cool.
Yeah, especially the debates about it.
Do you think, are you in favor of a membrane crested Nyctosaurus, or do you think it had like a split, like tuning fork horn, like is often depicted?
The second option.
Yeah, I do as well. I think
Yeah.
probably a big like Tapejara membrane would get in the way a little bit in flight, and you see a lot of those kind of like prong structures
Yeah.
in modern birds too, and they don't seem to impede with flight too, and they don't seem to impede with flight that much. I mean, we were talking about the horned screamer earlier, and that's I think a pretty solid analog for Nyctosaurus and Barbarodactylus and like those groups of like long crested pterosaurs. Um, yeah.
Another thing I really like about Nyctosauruses is that they had no sexual dimorphism, unlike the bigger one that was unrelated to them. I forgot the name.
Barbarodactylus?
Yeah, Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara had sexual dimorphism, but Nycto didn't, which is really interesting.
Yeah. They're so cool. Nyctosaurus is amazing.
Awesome. Tapipara is not my favorite, but it's really cool because it was like more herbivorous and omnivorous compared to the classic piscivore or carnivore pterosaur, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I would really like to look at like the Wukongopterids in China if I ever do pterosaur research. It's kind of unlikely because I think the direction that I'm going in, I'll probably end up with sort of more Triassic archosaurs. That's like my my dream, I guess, area to study in, but you never know where you'll end up. But I do really love the early Triassic archosaurs, and I would like to go into formal research there. Um, but like, there's so many beautiful and bizarre pterosaurs from
Awesome. Yeah, they were my
China.
favorites from when I was little. I had this encyclopedia and it had a page about like it was like it wasn't even in the scientific groups. It was generally the prehistoric creature that were bird like, not specifically um just dinosaurs. So it had pterosaurs, it had terror birds, it had what else? It has Archaeopteryx all in one page, and it was
Oh,
really cool.
yeah.
They were all illustrated. Of course, it wasn't saying they were in one group. It was just by the look of them, it did explain they were different. But it all of them were in one page, and they're still like my favorite ones. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit overrated, but I think Ajdar cheats are amazing, especially because I'm Persian and Ajdar means dragon in my language, and that's
Ah,
where it comes from. So I have a personal bias for them too.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's very. I think that's one of the coolest things about paleontology is like paleontology as kind of a vessel for cultural exchange because so many of these animals have a history that's not just their life history, but also because each of them
With
is
the
represented
name.
by a few specimens, those specimens are often like really connected to the culture of the people who found and excavated and named them, which is awesome. And I've
Yes.
gotten to know so many people from around the world just talking about paleontology with them because it's a common interest that shows up everywhere because there are extinct animals from every part of the world. So it is really
Mm-hmm.
cool to see.
Yeah, in Ajdar cheats there is Hatzegopteryx, of course, it's a coagulus, but the one I personally associate myself with is just Ajdar. Was it Ajdar?
I
Aj.
think Ajdarko is
Yeah,
the
Ajdarko,
main.
Ajdarko. Yeah, Ajdarko is the one. It was like more medium sized. It was large, of course, compared to normal pterosaurs, but it was like medium compared to how big Ajdarchids can get.
Mm.
So I like the name and like being a bit smaller but still cool.
Yeah, I also do like some of the smaller Ashtarkids. Navajo dactylus is a really cool
Also,
one. It's super fragmentary, but I like it represents like a smaller member of the family that is like Cryodraken and all the North American Ashtarkids. It's very
oh,
cool.
speaking of pterosaurs, I think Teleso is also really cool because people think it's a tape jared, but it's actually an Azarchid.
Sorry, what was the name of the genus again?
Um, I forgot the full, but it's Teleso.
Oh, Thalassodraken.
Yeah.
Oh, Thalassodromius. Yeah.
Yeah. They look like they're tape jarrets, and a lot of people think they are, but they're actually more ground dealing as their cheats, like they were as their cheats, but
That's
they look
awesome.
like tape jarrets. Yeah.
Yeah, they have that like super raised
Chris.
skull. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But if you like look at the anatomy of their skull underneath like
Yeah.
the crest, it looks very similar to just like an Ashtarkid skull with the crest on top, which is so fun.
They're awesome.
Yeah, that's a really lovely like genus of pterosaur.
Hmm.
All right, it is kind of late where I live, unfortunately, so I am
Yeah.
gonna
I
end
might
this
have to
stream
go
now.
too.
But it was
We
lovely
have
talking to
ended
you.
live in here. Yeah, it was great. It was very nice to meet you. You can reach me, of course.
Yeah, you too. It was great to meet you as
Awesome.
well. I hope you have a lovely night.
Thank you. It's morning here. It's 7
Oh,
a.m.
it's midnight where I am. It's 12 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you.
See you
That was a
too.
great
Thank you so
talk.
much for
Bye.
coming by.
Of
Bye.
course.
All right. Good night, everybody. Or good
Bye.
morning if you're in Turkey. And I hope everybody had a lovely stream.